In the late 80s and early 90s, Konami wasn't known as the publisher of Silent Hill or Metal Gear Solid. No, back then when you heard Konami, it was more likely that one of their licensed arcade games would come to mind. Or Castlevania. With games like The Simpsons, X-Men, and Ninja Turtles under their belt, Konami established themselves as the kings of arcade beat-em-ups. But with arcades on their way out, we started to see more and more games make their way to home consoles. That's exactly what happened when Konami brought their TMNT game to the Super Nintendo. I mean, this game had new levels, new bosses, and new features. This is one of those rare arcade ports that surpassed its predecessor in almost every way. Yeah, you couldn't play 4 players, but it was Super Nintendo. It's true that these games kind of boil down to just mashing the attack button over and over again, but I think with the right execution, you can keep the game interesting. If you're looking for an example of how not to make a satisfying beat-em-up, check out the modern-day remake of Turtles in Time. The graphics are probably the only thing that worked. Overall, it's a massive downgrade in control, sound design, and game length. I understand that this was a re-release of the arcade version, not the Super Nintendo one, but you're accustomed to these bosses and levels, and to not see them just seemed lazy. On top of that, the game just felt boring. It felt like shit. And it's almost something impossible to describe. You have to play the game side by side and you'll really understand where it's lacking. Nevertheless, this remake left fans wondering if all their fond memories of the original weren't justified. I even saw a review for it that said that these kind of games just don't hold up anymore and they belong in the past. But I assure you it's not true. If you go back and play the original, it's just as fun as you remember, and it's so much more satisfying than this piece of shit remake. From the start, the music kicks in and it gets your blood pumping with all its 16-bit glory. To this day, I find myself humming these tunes with a stupid smile on my face. Not only do you have a standard attack, but if you run at an enemy first, you can slam into them and stun them. And if you get the timing just right, you can throw them into the screen. There's even a boss where the only way to damage him is by doing that. You feel like you're ripping through enemies, one after the other. You're just so empowered and it feels great. If you're a Ninja Turtles fan, this game is just full of love for the franchise. You can choose to play as either the Turtles from the cartoon with bright green skin and pupils, or from the comic book with a bunch of different shades of green and my preferred Batman eyes. In fact, this entire game pulls from all versions of the Turtles, from Bebop and Rocksteady to Tokka and Razor. You fight Baxter Stockman, Leatherhead, the Rat King, Slash, it's got Krang in all his glory, and the next thing you know, you're taking on Super Shredder from the movie.
It's a Super Shredder!
This game is a showcase of the greatest enemies and locations in Ninja Turtles history. Wrap that fanfare around a more than capable brawler and you've got one of the best beat-em-ups of all time. And I'm not just saying that, you gotta check it out.